Okay, so as you're sitting up tall, we're gonna take our hands onto the side rib cage. So wherever that kind of looks for you, maybe it's like this, or maybe even kind of just wrapping your hands around. But I want you to feel your side rib, and you can close your eyes here. And what I'm going to invite you into doing is feeling the breath move into these side ribs. So see if you can feel the breath moving kind of out to the side, out to the right and out to the left here. And as you feel that movement out to the sides, inevitably you're also going to feel some movement happening into the front side of the body and into the back side of the body. And I want you to see kind of how much you can expand into these side ribs. So when you think you've got no more room left, see if you can expand the breath even a little bit more and feel the muscles that connect rib to rib being stretched or a little bit tugged on here. And you can even add a little bit of a hesitation when your lungs are completely full. Just pause there, feel the fullness of the breath. And then that slow release of the breath. Let's do 2 more here. And then next breath, take a hand to the front side of the chest. Let's just do a few where we focus on the front side of the chest expanding. So big inhale in. And again, if you want to hold just for a second or two with the lungs full, and then that slow exhale, letting go. Do a couple more. And then you can release. We're going to go into some bigger body movements. So make your way up to standing. And what we're going to do is when you get to standing, just take and turn your toes forward here. And you're going to do arms straight up above you. And we're going to just take the arm, you're going to bend the elbows, and you're just going to have the hands hover right in front of you. You're going to come all the way down. You're going to roll down. And then you're going to bend your knees. You're going to flex your hands, and you're going to push up, lean back. And then you're going to, again, bend the elbows, kind of this big swoop down, reach out in front of you, lean back, and then down. So they're getting some wrist movement in as you're doing spine movement, hips. And we're going to do one more time through this. And then as you come up, you can just let the hands come down. Separate your feet a little bit wider here. Toes will face forward. So what we're going to do, and you can even kind of lock your thumbs together, reach to one side as your hip goes the opposite direction, and then you're just going to switch that. So these big kind of sweeping actions, you can do a few of them low, and then do some high. We're just trying to warm up all the fascia within the body, kind of get the joints lubricated a little bit here, but getting rid of kind of that stiff feeling. All right, then as the hands come up, let's take that into a bigger sweeping motion. Arms out to the side, spread your fingers really wide. Bend the knees, come all the way down. Inhale, come all the way back up. Exhale it down. So just into what in yoga we call sunflower. Good. As the arms come all the way up, we're going to do what's called the rainbow. So you're going to rotate your feet one way. You're going to kind of pick up that back heel. Hands are going to float down and then rise all the way up. Rotate your feet all the other way into a lunge. Come down. Big sweep, come up. Keep rotating with the feet. So now getting the feet and ankles working here. All right, coming straight back up. You're going to take the hands into a V. Turn your toes out as well. And then we're going to bend the knees. Hands are going to come together into what's called horse pose in yoga. And then stretch that right back out. Come sink back down. So now getting a little bit deeper movements into the hips and knees, ankles here. Okay, next time hands come down, let them come down onto the legs. Keep the knees bent here. We're going to lift one heel and then the other heel. A little bit more mobility of feet and ankles here. Good, one more lift each side. And then we're going to straighten the legs, walk the feet in. And then we're just going to do big swings. So arms low, just rotating hips. Spine here. Do a few with the arms up high and low. You can even kind of rotate at the ankle, so you can like pick one foot up and rotate here. And you can do a few even coming halfway forward here. And then as you come up tall, just do big swings out in front of you. So up in front, reach back behind you. And then let's take it into a full circle of the arm. And as you do that circle, your shoulder tension is typically going to pull the arm away from your ear. So see if you can actually bring your arm and kind of brush it right next to your ear. And let's reverse that circle. All right, arms releasing. Take the legs back into a wide position here. We're going to bend one knee and you're going to take the other toes up and then just switch the other way. So let the hips move back here, getting into the inner thighs a little bit. Again, a different rotation into the feet and ankles. All right, next time that you go to one side, hold that side, move the hips back a little bit more. Try not to pop the hip out, but have the hip go straight back. And then switch it to the other side. And then we'll come up here. So I'm going to turn sideways. What you're going to do is you're going to just, hands can be on your hips to the front of the legs. You're just going to hinge halfway forward. Spine is going to stay really straight and come back up. As you start to tilt forward, your whole pelvis is going to move with you. So your tailbone, when you stand up, your tailbone's facing down. And then as you start to come forward, your tailbone starts to lift to the back wall. Come up. So yes, this is a hamstring stretch, but I want you to think about what's happening with the pelvis here as it tilts forward. Okay, now let's come halfway forward. Stay here. Belly's going to be engaged. And I want you to see if you can take and lift your tailbone up just a little bit more. All right, come up. We're going to take right foot in front of us. So split your feet. In yoga, this is like it's pyramid pose. We're going to do the same thing. So tailbone's going to start facing down towards the floor. And then as you hinge forward, your tailbone lifts up to the back wall. And then it goes back down again. And then it lifts up to the back wall. So we'll keep that. So this is all, again, it does work the hamstrings, yes, but it's pelvic mobility that's happening here. Okay, now let's come halfway forward and let's hold. You can see if you can keep working your tailbone up a little bit. And then next breath, come up. Switch to the other leg. Same action here, just tilting the pelvis forward and up first, and then we'll, after a few repetitions, we'll go into that hold. Okay, now let's go into that hold. Keep trying to lift the tailbone up. And then straighten back up here. Okay, we're going to come down onto all fours. We're going to kind of keep working with this principle of the pelvis moving here. So as you come down, we're going to set up into kind of looking at doing cat and cow, but we're not going to try to move our upper back. So we're just going to try to tuck the tailbone. So tailbone again will face down towards the floor, and then lift the tailbone up. Tailbone tucks under, and then lift it up. So try not to move your shoulders. Let those be really stationary, and it's the pelvis that we're trying to articulate here. Okay, then from here, what you're going to do is you're going to come into whatever your version of extended child's pose looks like. So that's where big toes come together, knees go wide, and set your hips back towards your heels. Hands, our fingertips can reach forward. Now, as you're in this, I want you to bring your awareness to your pelvis and your tailbone. And I want you to think about which direction is your tailbone facing? Is it curled down towards the floor, or is it kind of extended to that back wall? And if you're like, I don't know, that's fine. You can kind of just observe where you think it might be. All right, let's come back up onto hands and knees. So probably for most of us, when we go back into that extended child's pose, our tailbone's actually kind of curled down a little bit. And you can tell that because you have kind of a rounded lower back here. So what we're going to try to do is, can we tilt the pelvis? So tailbone is going to kind of stick to instead of being down, tailbone's going to stick to the back wall. Can you keep that as you come halfway back? So try not to tuck the tailbone under, and try to keep a really straight lower back. Okay, let's come back up on all fours. Go back into how you kind of normally do it and observe where the tailbone is now compared to the last version that we just did. Then we'll come back up onto hands and knees. If your big toes have been together for every single repetition that we've done, separate your big toes so that your ankles are the same distance apart as your knees. And now let's let the pelvis tilt down a little bit. So front side of the pelvis tilts to the floor a little bit. Your tailbone's going to kind of lift out. Keep that, and now start to settle your heels, your hips back towards your heels. And you probably are not going to be able to sit your hips down to the ground. And that's okay. Again, we're trying to work on extension of the lower back instead of tucking the tailbone under. All right, next breath, come up. We're going to take our right foot up in front of us into a low runner's lunge. And you can let your hips and body kind of deviate forward here. And as you're here, maybe you want to add a little bit of rocking right to left, where you can just hold stationary. Okay, so in this particular stretch, what's happening with the pelvis is that it's tilted forward, and we're now going to try to get it out of being tilted this way into neutral. So we're going to stand up onto that back knee. Okay, so once you get up onto that back knee, what we're going to do is you're going to let your pelvis tilt forward and then draw down. So do these little rocks here, pelvis tilts. So tailbone sticks down, tailbone lifts up. Tailbone goes down, tailbone goes up. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to keep the tailbone down. So it's kind of contradictory to everything that we've been doing now, is keep the tailbone down. And then from here, try to have this other knee start to track forward without the pelvis going like this. So tailbone stays down. Keep tracking, and you're going to get to a point where you can't have that knee slide forward anymore with the tailbone staying down. You're just going to hold and breathe. So hopefully what you're feeling is as your tailbone stays down, you're feeling a really big openness happening in the left side body. Okay, let's take and switch that over to the other side. So hands can come down first. We'll do this version, maybe rock the hips right to left. Okay, so now let's stand up onto that back knee. Again, we'll just do some pelvic movements. So tilting the pelvis forward, drawing the tailbone down. Okay, now we'll keep that tailbone down, and now we'll work into bending this front knee and stopping at the point where we start to feel the pelvis tilt forward. Good, and then we'll come up. Have a seat. So a lot of, probably, maybe some of you have been affected by this, but it was really funny though, because last week I had 3 different people, one being my husband and 2 of them just being friends, commenting about how working at home is causing them so much back pain because they're used to kind of walking around in their environment, or they're used to like stand up or sit down desks, and a lot of people are having back pain. Well, it's likely that people are sitting in very, very different chairs than they normally do. So here's what we're going to do is I want you to just come into crisscross or legs forward, whichever one you want to be. And I want you to become observant is as you sit down, what direction is your pelvis? Is your pelvis, are you kind of rotated back? Are you tilted forward? Kind of think about where again is your tailbone? Is your tailbone kind of tucked under, or is your tailbone pointing straight down or even kind of out a little bit? So just become observant of where, when you sit down, kind of where does it naturally go? And what's happening for a lot of people who maybe have, you know, really nice ergonomic chairs and those kinds of things, is they're now sitting in chairs that aren't ergonomic, just maybe aren't really the best chairs to sit in. And what's happening is, for most people, it's causing them to tuck under. So tailbone is tucked under, and they're curving the lower back a little bit. So if you weren't sitting like that, I want you to sit like that. So notice how the tailbone curls under, and these bones that are on the base of our pelvis, we call them the sits bones, or we call them like your butt bones. Their technical name is called your ischial tuberosities. And what happens is, when we tuck the tailbone under, we don't sit on those bones anymore, and we sit on all of our butt muscles. So we sit on our glutes, we sit on our piriformis, and they start taking on the weight of whatever our upper body is. And maybe as some of you guys are sitting there, you can kind of feel, oh yeah, I'm not connected to bone at all. And then do any of you kind of feel like right here in the front of your hips, they're like clenching and holding on for dear life? Because if these muscles weren't working here, you'd collapse back. So these hip flexors go, I'm gonna hold you up. And so I'm gonna be really, really tight here. Okay, so now let's come out of that. Let's come and rotate forward. So kind of do some of these extremes. Roll back, roll forward. And for some of you, you're gonna feel your butt bones, like you'll feel, oh, I'm on the back side. Yes, my tailbone's tucked under. Oh, now I've come to the front side of my butt bones, and my tailbone is kind of sticking this direction versus tucked under. So see if you can observe that. As we move our pelvis, you're probably seeing, oh, the spine is moving too. That's because the spine innervates into the pelvis. So whatever happens, whatever you do with your pelvis is going to play a big role in your spine. So now let's try to stay onto those butt bones, and notice how the tailbone again is kind of straight down, maybe even kind of out a little bit, and you have this natural curvature in your back. And now hopefully these muscles at the front of your hips aren't screaming for dear life to hold you upright, because you've got your core working for you. Okay, again, go back into that bad rounded tailbone tucked under. And I want you to now become observant of what's happening with your stomach muscles. And then start to upright yourself, and what happens with your stomach muscles. And if you're not sure, go back to tailbone tucked under. And if we could be dialoguing, probably a lot of you guys would say, like, I feel some sort of engagement, but not a ton. And then as soon as I sit upright, it feels like someone just took like a zipper of a coat and just zipped me all the way up. And it feels like my back muscles are now engaged, stomach muscles are now engaged. Okay, so stay like this for a moment. So pelvis is in good alignment. Take your hands behind your back. So interlock the hands behind your back. Reach your knuckles down towards the floor. Start to pinch your shoulder blades towards each other. And then we're just going to do some lifts and lower here. Seeing if we can do some upper body movement while the pelvis stays in proper positioning. So some of the drawbacks of this tailbone tucked under seated posture is tight hip flexors, lower back loses its curvature, stomach muscles start to weaken, and then the shoulders slump forward. All right, release here. Go to a really big extreme tailbone tucked under. Do cat pose. Bring your chin towards your chest. Roll your shoulders forward. Breathe into the space right in between your shoulder blades. Good, and then come back up, tall posture. Now for some of you, I didn't mention this earlier, for some of you to get into this position where your pelvis is in a good space, you might need to sit on something. So that's always an option. Like if your pelvis can't get out of this tailbone tucked under, if you sit on something, it'll help tilt your pelvis forward. So that's always an option for you to bring into anytime you're sitting. Okay, let's take our hands behind our back, but this time switch the pointer finger. Put the other pointer finger over top here. And again, let's add some movement up and down here. Okay, then what you're going to do is you're going to bend your elbows and you're going to bring your hands over to the left side of your body. Okay, so hands to the left side of the body. I'm going to spin forward so I'm not looking awkwardly. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your head and tilt it to the opposite direction of your hands. And now roll your chin down towards your chest and then begin to roll it over to the same side that your hands are in. And see if you can just begin to lengthen and open up the side of the neck. And if you want to add some nods here of letting the head move forward, head go back, feel free to add that in. And then let's take our chin back down towards our chest. Okay, head coming back up. If you are doing legs crisscross, switch the cross of your legs just so we get some different stimuli to the legs here. Try to keep the pelvis still in neutral. Okay, hands behind your back. Go to interlocking the hands in the way that feels most natural for you, and then bring the hands over to the opposite side of the body. Okay, we're going to start with head tilting away from the hands. In the beginning of class, we focused on breathing into the side body, and this is one again where you could breathe into the side body, maybe even based on where your hands are, you could feel the breath even move into your hands. And then let's drop our chin down. And then roll it over to the other side. If you want to add some nods here up and down, you can add that. And then head releasing down, let the hands go here. Okay, if you did happen to tuck something underneath your hips, take that out, and then we're going to bend our knees here, so feet flat on the floor. And what you're going to do is we're going to again start with spine in neutral, tailbone's going to be facing down. And then what we're going to do is we're going to tuck the tailbone, so now tailbone's kind of facing underneath, and then we're going to come up. So it's, again, a pelvic rotation. We're not going to try to do cat pose, so we're not tucking the chin, shoulders rolling forward. We're trying to keep the upper body out of it as much as we can, just coming into a pelvic movement here. And you can slow it down a little bit. So try to roll, kind of tuck the tailbone under as much as you can, and then tilt the pelvis forward as much as you can. Feel the extremes of mobility that you have within the pelvis. Okay, now the next time that the pelvis comes forward, we're going to hold it there. And you're going to take and lift one knee up off the floor. Now, if you want to hold that knee, you can. If you don't want to hold it, you can just take that hand off. And you're going to flex your foot. Okay, so it's in yoga like boat pose. Spine is really long here. So let's take and switch it to the other side. And release. Okay, when I personally do boat pose, the muscles right in front of here, they tense up really bad. So if that's you, use more of your arms to hold the weight of your legs and get the hip flexors not to stress out as much. Okay, so let's do one leg again. And again, you can do no hand if you want. I'm going to do hands because my hip flexors are not enjoying this very much. Okay, let's switch other side. And then let's do both. Flex the feet, squeeze the knees together here. So we haven't tucked under. So yeah, that's what we're watching here. We're not tucking the tailbone under here. We're into a neutral pelvis. Good, set the feet down for a moment. And then we're gonna progress this boat pose into whatever depth you want. So if you wanna take hands off and you wanna be here, if you wanna come to 90 degrees, you can come to 90 degrees. So you're figuring out where you wanna be. And again, if your hip flexors are really bothering you, use your arms to suspend the legs here. So navel's gonna draw inward. Okay, release the feet down. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna tuck the tailbone under, we're gonna go into a full cat pose, and then we're gonna come up. So now let the shoulders roll forward, chin towards your chest. Hands really aren't being used here, so you can even take the hands off if you want. Okay, next time that you roll back, I want you to lift your toes up off the floor, and I want you to press your heels down into the floor as you go back. So as you go back, pause for a minute, ground through your heels, keep your heels connected to the floor, come back up. Okay, now set your toes down. Can you keep your toes connected to the floor as you come up and as you go down? Because sometimes for some of us, our toes will lift up off the ground. Okay, one more time. Okay, legs are gonna go out in front of us. And what we're gonna do here is we're just gonna do a little tuck. So little tailbone tuck under, come up. So not a full cat-cow that we were just doing. Again, working, just trying to feel us roll to the back side of the pelvis, the front side of the pelvis. All right, now let's take it into more of a full cat. So arms can come out in front of you if you want, or hands down. Roll back, tuck the tailbone under, shoulders forward. Good, now push your feet away from you as you come up, tall spine. Round down, see if you can get your waistline towards the floor. Press back up. Couple more. All right, now let's see if we can go all the way down. So really controlled, and where it's going to be the most difficult is in your lower back. So can you release your waistline? Go slow, go slow, go slow. Extend arms up overhead. And then once you get overhead, you can bend your knees and you can swing and rock yourself back up. Okay, so we're intentionally trying to work this slow movement down. Okay, one more time, and then once you get onto your back, you're going to stay on your back. Okay, once you get there, you can bend your knees. Okay, so we have been working the pelvis in all different positions. So standing, seated, on all fours. So now we're going to do it on our backs. So let's first start with rocking our pelvis right to left, which as we rock the pelvis right to left, it's going to move the knees and it's going to rotate the spine here. Okay, now bringing the pelvis into neutral. What we're going to do now is we're going to tuck the tailbone under. So the tailbone's going to kind of curl up towards the ceiling, and we're going to have a flat back. And then we're going to curl the tailbone down towards the floor as much as we can, and we're going to get a big curvature in our back. So we're going to go through those two extremes, tailbone tucked under, tailbone facing down. So again, whatever we're doing with the pelvis has a reciprocal action with moving the vertebrae. Okay, now the next time that you press your back down into the floor, I want you to hold it there. Arms at your sides, press the outside edge of your shoulders down and press your palms down. And then from here, walk your heels in so that they're right underneath your knees. And we're gonna keep pressing the back into the floor so much that our tailbone lifts up off the ground. So just hold there. Hopefully you feel a lot of engagement in the belly. Now, see if you can curl your waistline up. Just hold. Good, start to curl your lower back up. And now start to peel your bottom ribs up. And then the middle of the back. And then come all the way up to the top into our bridge pose. Good, press down through your feet. And then elevate the heels. Heels then sinking. Start to release your middle back. See if you can get the lower ribs to touch. Lower back touches. Waistline. And then curl the rest of your spine down, let go. Okay, we're going to do that again really slow. Press the lower back down. Lift your waistline up. Okay, now lower back, lower ribs, middle back, all the way up, hold at the top. Anchor through the outside edge of your shoulders. Heels lift. Heels down. Stay here for a moment, and what I want you to imagine is that there's somebody in front of you and they have their hands, they put their hands on your knees and they're gently pulling your knees away from you. So that action of imagining the knees moving away from you, for some of you is going to start to open up this front hip flexors. Okay, now start to release upper back, middle back, lower back. Curl the tailbone all the way down. Okay, do that a little bit faster. Curl one vertebrae at a time, come all the way up. Hold at that top. Good, again, imagine your knees tracking away from you. And then some of you, you may want to add more of a chest opener. So you might want to start to curl your shoulders under and start to maybe get your fingertips to touching your heels. And then others of you might want to go even more and interlock your hands underneath and really start to pinch your shoulder blades together, feeling the sternum lift up here. All right, start to untuck your shoulders and then start to peel your vertebrae all the way back down. And then once you get to the bottom, what we're going to do is we're going to do a circle of the pelvis. So you're going to go one direction a few times. And then let's circle the pelvis the other direction. And then you can bring both knees in towards your chest and hug them in. And if you want to add a rock or circling, you decide what's most appropriate. Okay, from here, tick and roll onto your side. And you're going to come up onto all fours. So another thing that happens when we sit tailbone tucked under a lot is our glutes they kind of stop doing their job. They kind of forget what their purpose is. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the right leg straight back behind us. You lift your heel up the same height as your hip. And as you do that, the tendency would kind of be to come forward and have your hips in front of the knee that's on the ground. You want your hip right over top. So this leg is, this femur is completely vertical here. And what we're going to do is little pulses of the back heel. And that's going to start to fire up this glute. Okay, then from here, bend that knee. Okay, so 90-degree angle. You're going to press that heel straight up, come down. Press up, come down. As you keep moving here, watch what's happening with your shifting of your body weight, because you probably may have started to shift towards the left. So you got to keep your stomach muscles engaged. Try not to shift. Okay, one last time, take that leg down. Okay, switch other leg straight back. So hip right over knee, and then little pulses of the heel. Okay, bend that knee, heel lifts, down a little bit. Now, as you're doing this, the tendency here in your ribs is to collapse and to do kind of like cow pose. You want to keep your lower ribs up, so you're not getting this really big sway in your lower back. Good, release down here. Okay, we're going to go back to some the hip flexor stretch that we did in the beginning. So you're going to take your right foot forward, and we'll start in this low lunge with the pelvis again kind of angled this direction. Okay, let's now lift up onto that back knee. So get up onto that back knee. Tailbone's going to face down. Okay, keeping the tailbone down, bend deeper into this front knee and pause wherever your tight space is. From here, you're going to take your left hand and you're going to reach it up. You might have to drop your right hip down a little bit. So kind of something I was noticing is this right hip kind of pikes up and this side body comes shorter. You kind of got to drop this right hip down and now reach the arm across the body. And if you want even more stretch happening here in this front hip flexor, you can bend your elbow and then take and press your head into the back of your hand and kind of extend backwards a little bit. Okay, let's release. Let's switch it to the other side. So come first into that low lunge. And then we'll rise up onto that back knee, tailbone down. Left knee tracks forward. Good, right arm up. Again, I can tell because I can tell my shirt's all scrunched. So I know that I've elevated this left hip up. So I'm going to invite that left hip back down. Get at the same space on each side of my torso. And then start to extend over. And if you want more, bend that elbow, press the head back, kind of lift up through the sternum. Okay, release. We're taking switch sides again. So right foot forward, same thing, tailbone down, bending into that front knee. But this time what we're going to do with this back leg is we're going to rotate it in. So rotate that knee in as much as works for you. And if it doesn't feel good, like put a cushiony thing underneath your knee. So foot rotates in, tailbone still stays down, track the other knee forward. So it's just getting into our hip a little bit differently. And then each breath, see if you can track the right knee forward just a little bit. Okay, let's switch that, go over to the other side. Get your rotation in, tailbone down. Each breath, see if you can just go a little bit further. Okay, release. We're going to come back into that extended child's pose, but we're going to do it with, again, not having tailbone tucked under. Try to do tailbone out to the back wall. Come back down and see if maybe you have a little bit more freedom in your pelvis and in your hips to let your hips come down without tucking the tailbone under. Good, and then next breath, come up. Okay, we're gonna come down onto our stomach, but I'm gonna show you a way that you can come down onto your stomach and have it be an opener for your hip flexors. So if you have a blanket, or if you have a pillow, even if you kind of roll up your yoga mat, what you can do is you can set that pillow or blanket, whatever you have, in front of you. So your front hip bones, they would be resting on it, but nothing below them would be resting. So your front hip bones would be resting on that. And if you don't have anything, that's okay, but this is an option if you want it. So your front hip bones would be resting, but your pubic bone, so the bone at the very base of your pelvis and the front side of the body, that wouldn't be on your pillow or your blanket. It would be free. And what you're trying, it's a very subtle tilt of the pelvis, which brings freedom to these front hip flexors. So elbows can come just in front of you. Even again, if you don't have something underneath your pelvis, elbows can just come in front of you. And then let's add palms facing up, so we get a little bit of external rotation here. So you're just going to breathe. It's just about breathing here. And each breath, you're just seeing if you can let your pelvis soften down a little bit more. So pubic bones keep sinking down towards the floor. As we just stay stationary here with the lower body, let's take our chin down towards our chest and just keep sinking the chin here. Maybe you want to add a little, maybe lift the head up a little bit and kind of rock your head right to left. And starting to feel the head kind of extend up out of the shoulders. Maybe kind of moving your chin around a bit. Maybe looking over one shoulder. You might even want to do a few movements where the chin goes way up towards the ceiling and then down towards the chest. So any kind of neck release that you're feeling prompted to add in here. And then you're going to take and stretch your arms out in front of you. You're going to cross your hands and let your forehead rest onto the backs of the hands. So now as we've released the upper body, you may have noticed, oh, my tailbone lifted up off the floor. Or not my tailbone, sorry. Pubic bone. So we're going to breathe into the belly. And we're just going to see if we can invite, again, the hip flexors to start to let go. And allow our pubic bone to come back down towards the floor. In the beginning of class, we focused on the breath moving into the side body, towards our armpits. So as you breathe into the belly, you can also think about that, the breath moving out to the side. Maybe adding that little pause when your lungs are completely full of air before you slowly exhale. We're just going to stay in this posture. We're going to end with just a few more breaths here. There's a tremendous amount of nerve endings that are at the base of the spine, right where the base of the spine and the pelvis connect at the sacral area. And when we sit, tailbone tucked under, we kink all of those nerves. So you think of a garden hose and you think about when it gets kinked, what happens to the water flowing through it. The water gets altered. And so tailbone tucked under creates a kinking in all of the neurological communication from our feet and our toes and our legs to our brain. It can also not only affect the nerves of the lower leg, but it affects the blood supply to the lower legs as well. So our veins and arteries are also little tubes. And so tailbone tucked under can create a kink in that where it can't get adequate or appropriate blood flow down into the legs. So being able to get out of tailbone tucked under is, yes, good for our back. It's good for our stomach muscles. It's good for releasing the tension in the front side of the hip flexors. So it has tremendous amount to the skeletal system, to the muscular system. But it even has more benefit to the nerves, to the blood flow. And I forgot to mention lymphatic system, but we have a ton of lymph nodes that run through this area too, and that's like a drainage system of all the gook, all of the waste byproducts. I mentioned that my husband has been sitting a lot more in a really not so great chair, and he's developed sciatica, which is it's a nerve that gets impinged. And so he's had to learn to, I can't sit tailbone tucked under because that's pressing on that nerve. Okay, so 2 more deep breaths here. And then after that last deep breath, you can start to press yourself all the way up and come up into sitting.